Hello students, hope everyone can hear me clearly. So can someone type and tell me whether I am audible or not? Okay, Tahir, thank you very much. Right student, on behalf of CS Sri Lanka, I warmly welcome you all for the May-June 2022 mock examination paper Prescene discussion. So just to give some kind of an understanding about the session that we are going to conduct today, as well as the things that we are going to discuss today. So basically myself as well as Suranga sir is there to discuss the Prescene with you. So myself will basically taking you through the financial reporting part, as well as Suranga sir will take you through the risk of material misstatement and corporate governance and other related parts. So just to start the session, just to give you some small announcement. So this session will not actually myself and Indulis discussed earlier. We will not take that much of a time to we will not take that much of time to discuss this Prescene, because it is like a more or less kind of a open-ended Prescene this time we have for the mock examination, and don't come to any pre-conclusions that final examination Prescene also will be like this, right? So this is not the Prescene that institute is going to give you for the final examination, which is coming on July, right? So this is basically for the Prescene. Prescene is for the mock examination, only for the mock examination, and this has developed basically to make you familiar with the subject and the surrounding on the examination environment. So as an institute and as a division, education division of Sri Lanka has identified there's a huge requirement, especially when it's come to this particular subject, SL1, there's a problem with the pass rate and all those things. That is why they have organized this specific mock examination, you to improve and you to get the maximum benefit out of it. So that is why they have encouraged you to do the examination, mock examination prior sitting to the actual examination. I think this entire process is exactly like a whatever the process similar to the final examination. I think it will be more helpful you to practice before the exam, real exam, right? So with that note, student, I will be sharing, without giving too much of description, I will be sharing the presentation with you. So hope everyone can see the presentation. Right? Can you see the presentation, students? Can you see the presentation? Yes, yes, thank you. Yes, okay. Basically, I will be discussing the initial introductions and all those things, and I will hand over to the to Suranga sir, because he is having good areas to discuss. For me, it was like very few areas to discuss when it's come to financial reporting part, right? So just to start with the Prescene analysis, so don't take this as a hardship or kind of a burden, right? Extra burden. Try to get the maximum benefit out of this, and I will be telling then and there why the Prescene is important and where the Prescene is applied for your examination, right? So here, student, basically just to take you through the past papers of this particular subject, SL1, Advanced Business Reporting. If you closely look at the past paper structure, you all know we have three main sections. We have two main sections, starting from question 1, 2, and 3. So that is the setup in the paper, structure in the paper. In that paper, student, the Prescene is more or less applicable to question number 3. Not more or less. Actually, the Prescene is important for the question number 3 or the section 2 of the paper. So in the section 2 of the paper, using the Prescene, there are 3 types of questions coming to the examination. So what is basically coming, the consolidation or the group account question is basically driven through the Prescene, right? When you analyze the Prescene, you may come to this kind of a group structure we have. This might be the possibilities. I think you all can remember, right? I think if you have set for the examination last time, right? If you are first time attempters, you can go and see the last Prescene as well as last past papers. You may evident that the consolidation question is like mainly depend on the Prescene. So some of the information in the Prescene that you need to keep in your mind, that you need to be taken to when you are answering the question, especially in the consolidation part. Then the second part is SLFRS and LKS related questions also developed based on the Prescene, as well as the risk of material misstatement, corporate governance, and so normally we say the audit part also coming based on the Prescene. So that is how basically the 50 marks question is depend on the Prescene. So that is why every time we are encouraging you to do a good Prescene analysis, just not try to rush through the Prescene, right? Don't do it. Go through each and every word in the Prescene and do a depth analysis before going to the exam, because there are some instances that we may and you may also can predict some of the areas which might come to the examination. I am not telling that 100% we can predict the examiner, but up to some extent we can tell you these kind of questions might be tested, and you can do more focus on those areas during the final month of your studies, right? So students, again, this is a famous disclaimer that I am making for the, especially when we are discussing the Prescene analysis. So Prescene is like a student, the iceberg theory. I think you all know iceberg theory. So whatever the visible part is this, right? So there is some unseen as well. So with this Prescene, what is visible to this, right? So there are some bigger parts coming in the unseen. So don't think that Prescene will be the everything, because whatever the things tested, telling in the Prescene may be upside down when it's come to the unseen. So prepare. Don't come to like firm conclusions depend on the Prescene. Keep in your mind that unseen also will be come to the examination, and everything will be different. So the best thing is analyze the Prescene and go to the exam with a free mind. That is very much important, right? So here, student, our Prescene is basically, we have 70-page Prescene, and out of that, I think the printed versions are with you, right? If you don't have the printed version, take a printout and read the Prescene before the examination. And we have the 12-page for the Prescene, and the remaining parts are like annexures. So here, student, basically, and the Fair Life Insurance PLC. So when we say the Fair Life Insurance PLC, it is basically a regulated industry like banks, finance, right? It is basically a regulated industry that we are talking about. So Prescene is talking about basically regulated industry. So don't get panicked, because I know when we say the Fair Life Insurance PLC, what might come to your mind, there is a ongoing discussion relating to new insurance contract related accounting standard, and you might think that the particular standard knowledge will be tested from you. So I will tell you so roughly some idea about that question as well when going forward when we are discussing. So don't get panic at the very beginning. Even though it's an insurance related company, we will read and see what is there in the Prescene, right? So here, student, if you closely read the Prescene, I am not going to read the Prescene again here, right? So I have summarized whatever the important things which is included in the Prescene. So they are saying this is the third largest life insurer of the Sri Lanka, right? As well as they are saying the Fair Life Insurance was established in 1999, somewhat not that much old company, but a fairly old company. And the company was acquired by Fair Holding, one of the leading conglomerate in Sri Lanka, who is into healthcare and a lot of business segments, right? So it was happened in 2011. And there's a de-investment of general insurance business. So you know, there are a lot of insurance companies in Sri Lanka. There is an ongoing discussion somewhere around 2015-16, that range. So this company also subjected to, they have de-invest, basically they have get rid of the general insurance business. General insurance business means basically the motor insurance and all those general kind of insurance. And now they are mainly focusing on life insurance products, or let's say life and personal kind of insurance product that they are focusing at the moment. And in 2016, this happened, and they have rebranded their company. And now with their new name, after 2016, they are mainly into life insurance industry, life insurance, right? So normally, student, when we see these, when we read this first 2 to 3 paragraph, there is an identical company comes into our mind, right? If you closely look at that, there is an identical company comes into our mind. I think Surang also will tell you basically the SoftLogic Life. It is more or less kind of a similar identical company which is given in the Prescene. But some of the time students are doing a big mistake. when there is an identical company, what they're trying to do is they stop everything and they are trying to go and find out about the identical company. They go and read the annual report, they start reading annual reports, whatever the things they do. And they are too much focusing about the identical company rather than focusing on the pre-seed. So I would say, yes, if you have identical company, you can have some kind of an idea, but don't too much go and analyze that identical company, because whatever the identical company, same thing will not come to the exam. So you have to analyze the pre-seed, right? And you have to complete a good analysis based on the pre-seed that is required. And here, student, Sri Lanka first video version of the annual report, also video version of the annual report also developed by themselves in 2017. So basically it is innovative company, same as the Soft Logic Life. They also have done this kind of a practice with a video version of annual report. And now they are the third largest, but in 2019, it's a fast growing company, fourth largest company. Now they have became third largest company with 12.5 billion in 2009, top line revenue of 12.5 billion. And here, student, you can see USD 30 million investment, right? LKR 5.6 billion investment was made, invested in Fair Life Growth Fund, FinFund, No Fund, and Monetary. So these are basically, student, this FinFund and No Fund are like basically the funding investment funds, global investment funds. If I'm not mistaken, the No Fund is a Norwegian company, Norwegian investment kind of a company, and Monetary is a reinsurer. One of the, I think, world largest German-based reinsurer. I think because more than myself, Suranga is having a good understanding related to insurance industry, and he will take you through the whatever this terminologies, reinsurance, and all those things as well. But just to tell you, so basically there's a good investment came in, as well as there's a leapfrog investment. So there's a famous again there's a famous investment company investment party called the Leapfrog Investment. So if you really want, it is good for you understanding, you can go and you can search the Leapfrog Investment, what they are doing basically in emerging markets, financial services industry, and likewise mainly the insurance industry. The Leapfrog Investment, that particular entity, they have invested in emerging markets, right? So here, student, that is the basic introduction about the Fair Life Insurance PLC and the background. And when it comes to the remaining parts, I have extracted these parts as well, because this will give you good understanding about the company, what kind of a company that they are taking about in the pre-seed. Sri Lanka based health insurance, right? The fast growing insurer, and innovative, lot of innovations they do. And first micro insurance provided in life insurance industry, and fastest claim, right? So just don't go these things into deeper, but I am telling you, because fast claim settlement means they are settling the claims, whatever the health and insurance related claims, very fast, right? So they are not delaying and taking a lot of time. So these are some indications to get some idea about the company that we are going to analyze in this pre-seed, right? So moving forward, again, I don't see that much of a prominence in this information, but just to share. So as of 31st December 2020, so individual shareholding like 4% and institutional shareholding. There's a huge institutional shareholding rather than individual shareholding, as well as resident and non-resident shareholding, because the shareholders are, some of the shareholders are local shareholders, some of the shareholders are foreign shareholders. So we have evident earlier also the Leapfrog Investment or any other monetary and some other investment funds have invested in this particular company. Maybe they are in there as the non-resident shareholders of the company. And these are the product categories that they have, because insurance also we have different categories. When, let's say, some insurance agent approach us, there are a lot of types of products. So protection, basically you can have life protection from this company. So Fair Life Insurance is basically into protection. And investment, it is like a saving or a fixed deposit kind of a product. Investment purpose, they have some products. And retirement, pension schemes they have. And health insurance they have. And corporate insurance. Corporate insurance means basically, so if you are working in a company, you might have a corporate insurance cover. So this company is more or less into that product segment as well. And optional benefits. So there are some optional benefits. So there are a lot of benefits, let's say income protection benefit. Likewise, there are a lot of optional benefits when it comes to insurance industry. So more or less these are the products that they have at the moment, right? So students, I think that is more or less the background of the company and this insurance company. So I will be directly directly going to the financial reporting parts and what are the testable accounting standards. So anyway, students, in this Prescene, we don't have that much of indications relating to the standards that they are going to test. Very limited information is included. I think intentionally they have done it. Why? Not to make you complicated before the real exam. Otherwise, what will happen if they are giving like a complicated Prescene, you will confuse even before the examination. So that is why it's good. I'm taking it as a good sign. So you can go to the, even though we have the Prescene, take it practice and you can go to the exam with a free open-ended mind, right? So whatever the testable accounting is standard. So when we are reading this particular Prescene, so I think that insurance contract, you might ask with the insurance contract, SLFRS 17 or IFRS 17, will they test SLFRS 17 or IFRS 17? So basically, student, I will tell you, my prediction is they will not test from IFRS 17. Why? So if you can see, IFRS 17 is not yet effective at the moment, and there are some ongoing, highly debatable discussion. Still, there are some debatable discussion when it comes to some IFRS 17 practices in Sri Lanka. Right? Still, there are some debates going on with the insurance companies and whatever the accounting standards set. Here, Sri Lanka also have some discussions related to IFRS 17. And that is why I don't believe, I'm not believing that this standard is more or less not that fully completed, right? In our context as well. And that is why I think more or less they will not test questions from IFRS 17. Even though they are testing questions from IFRS 17, it is more or less like a conceptual kind of a question. What is mean by a conceptual kind of a question? If you go there in 2000, let's say 18, 19 range, so that was a range that we had three main standards, 9, 15, and leasing standard. So at that period also, student, at the very beginning, let's say SLFRS 15, the revenue standard comes at the very beginning. What was the question included in the paper? They were not going to the depth of the standard. They just have asked what is meant by 5-step and how it's going to apply the revenue recognition. Likewise, they were like testing your overall conceptual knowledge, not going to deeper, right? Anyway, the insurance contract, if you go through the study pack also, you have the old insurance contract standard. So there's very less prominence given to the insurance contract standard. And here, student, again, if they are testing, more or less they will have a conceptual kind of question. And I believe that also very remote possibilities having, right? Okay, students. So just to share some definitions from IFRS 17, what is the insurance contract? So you might not aware about the insurance contract. This is not the, my ultimate purpose is not to describe the definitions and not to teach the IFRS 17, just to make you familiar with the terminologies. I think that when it comes to financial statement, Indonesia service describe, because the financial statement, if you take the financial statement, you may not see, right? If you can go to the P&L, you may not see any revenue. Nothing as revenue. Instead of revenue, you have gross written premium, right? There's nothing called cost of sales here. You have something called premiums for insurance, and you don't have, right? Likewise, there are new terminologies comes in. If you go to the balance sheet also, statement of financial position also, there are some new reserves, restricted regulated reserves. You might not aware what is meant by that. Likewise, when you have some insurance contract liability, you don't know what it is, because this is a regulated industry. Some of the terminology, some of the balance sheet and the P&L items may not that much familiar to you, but don't worry. So we will give you some idea about those things as well. So just to tell you, what is an insurance contract? Let's say, just to take, don't go into the definitions in detail, just get some kind of an idea. Let's say this is you are having some kind of a risk, right? When you are having some kind of a risk, what you do is you are transferring that risk to the insurance company, right? And what you do is you pay some installment for that. You pay some premium for that. We call it premium, insurance premium. And you are transferring your risk, right, to the insurance company. And if, let's say, your risk is your life, if something happens to your life, they will compensate. They will compensate. Something happened to your life, they will not compensate to you. Maybe your next available beneficiaries, they will compensate, right? So that is the risk. You might have a risk when you are retiring. You might not have enough wealth. to continue your life until you after the retirement. So they will take your pension risk or the retirement income risk, and they will give you some pension after you retire. Likewise, the insurance contract is basically taking a risk, and they are covering up a risk for let's say installment. So anyway, the perfect definition is also included, you can see, and they are basically compensating after some occurrence of some agreed terms. So what is meant by reinsurance system? That is also something new to you. That might be something new to you. So reinsurance means basically, student, let's say you are the policy holder. So if you are insuring your life, let's say this is the Fair Life Insurance company, they can insure your life. It doesn't matter, because something happened to your life, they can pay off. Maybe 5 million, 10 million, they can pay off. Let's say you are insuring a big vessel, right? Big ship or a airplane, right? Likewise, a big asset, high valuable asset, right? In that case, student, standalone basis, that particular insurance company may not in a position to bear that particular risk. Why? If something happened to that big vessel, we have to pay them back. In that case, maybe our entire fund is not enough to pay them back. Huge risk. So when we have a huge risk as an insurance company, what they do is we are going for a reinsurer. So Munich Re is the one of the reinsurer, right? So we are going to have a reinsurer. What we do is, again, we have a risk. What is the risk? If something happened to this big vessel, big ship, aeroplane, there's a huge risk that I might pay and I might lose my financial position. So what I do is to cover up my risk, I am also going for another insurance company. That is what we call a reinsurer. So I think now you have some kind of an understanding about these two terminologies, insurer and reinsurer, right, student? So coming back to what we have discussed earlier, basically the accounting standard. So when we say the testable accounting standard, obviously in this paper, you know, if you go to the past papers and analyze revenue, SLFRS 9 and SLF leasing standard 16, those standards are normally there's high probability to test in the exam. So no need to analyze the Prescene. If you go and analyze the past papers, anyone can tell it, right? So this time also for the mock examination, there's a high probability. I might not say that everything will come, but let's say some of the standard, some of the questions from these big three standards will come to the paper, right? Even for the final July paper also, I have to do the same thing. These five big standard will be tested. So here, student, other than that, based on the Prescene, when I am reading some of the standards that came into my mind. So LKS 21. So effects of change in foreign exchange rate. So basically they have some foreign investors as well as USD investment. And other thing is, student, one more or less important, this SL1 paper, they are giving some, I would say, some blend to the current economic condition. So if you go back and see the past papers in 2021 or 2020 range, there are a question from COVID-19. But now don't expect pure questions from, still we have some effect of post-COVID effects. But still, now what is the biggest problem we have? So we are here in the terms like hyperinflation, right? We are here in the term like the exchange rate crisis, economic crisis. So more or less, there are some standards. So basically, when it comes to these standards, LKS 21 and 29, right? Hyperinflation economy financial reporting, those standards might be tested for the mock examination. Those standards might be tested for the mock examination. So just a wild guess, not sure 100%, just a wild guess, but I think they will relate it. Then obviously there are some, obviously this is a group structure. So the related party disclosure standard might be tested for the paper as well. Because there's no that much of information about the group structure. I believe the group structure, because we need more information about the group structure to prepare the consolidation question. I think unseen will be some kind of a area where you have to carefully read, because group structure, very few or very limited information available in the Prescene. Actually, I can say no adequate information in the Prescene related to the group structure, but that is very much required for the consolidation, and you have to be very careful because unseen it will be there. And operating segment also might be tested because we have the product segments and all those things. Geographical segment also we might have, don't know, not enough information provided. So based on the information, so these are the predictions about the testable accounting standard based on the Prescene. But other than that, whatever the things that I have mentioned, you have to keep in your mind, right? So when it's come to testable consolidation question, again, that is very much doubtful. Why? There's no information about the subsidiaries of this company. There's no information. Anyway, only information given is this company is under a holding, Fairlife Holding. This company is a subsidiary under the Fairlife Holding. That is the only information given about the group structure. Other than that, subsidiary, associate, joint ventures, nothing has given, right? So consolidation question will be a failure in whatever the question coming to the mock paper will be a question which is driven to unseen information, which is mainly driven through unseen information. So keep that in your mind, student. And one more thing that I want to tell you when it's come to consolidation question, don't expect a conventional type of a question. So what we do is, normally what we do is we are giving the P&L, or let's say forget about the P&L, normally more or less testing the balance sheet side. No, so we are giving the balance sheet, then some adjustments, then you prepare the consolidated balance sheet of the parent, subsidiary, associate, joint venture, and you have to you are giving some adjustments. And no, that kind of a thing you can't expect. That kind of a thing you can't expect, because if you closely look at the past papers, and that is why most of the time students are scoring very few marks even for the consolidation question. Why? They might think in the classroom environment or any other practices, they might think this kind of a traditional type of a question will come, but it is not happening. So maybe some particular years, they have not even told you to prepare the consolidated account. They just ask what is the impact on consolidated finance statement, what is the impact, what is the goodwill. Likewise, they have asked specific information only. So last paper also, you can see they have given the consolidated balance sheet in the Prescene. What they want us to do, they want to eliminate one company. Just because of a disposal, they want to eliminate one of the companies. So that also not a common type of a question. Likewise, very innovative kind of a question will come to the consolidation question, consolidation part. So get ready for that. Don't get stuck into format, right? Predetermined conclusions. You may have done whatever the adjustments in your studies. That is okay. Don't think that kind of a question will come, but take whatever the logic to your head and go to the exam in the free, open-ended mind. So that's, I think, that is the more or less the things that I wanted to test. I wanted to tell you when it's come to the financial reporting part. So anyway, I'll be not disconnecting. I will be with you through the entire session. Anyway, I will hand over session to Suranga sir. And anyway, if you have any question, you can ask. We are after the session also, we will give you some minutes to ask you any questions. So Suranga sir, over to you. So sir will describe whatever the remaining parts, right?
Right. Thanks, Chamath. I hope I am audible.
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Yes, I feel. Shall I share the screen, Chamath? It may be easy. Yeah. And you can see my screen, no?
Yes, yes, sir.
Right. Thank you. So I think Chamath gave a very good introduction about the purpose of this discussion, and so I want to tell you one important thing without taking your valuable time as an intro. Remember, students, this mock exam is a very serious thing, because you ask from students who have been successful as well as those who have been unsuccessful. Everybody, right, will say after the exam we didn't have time. Especially, this is a paper which is open book, which is multidisciplinary: financial reporting, corporate governance, sustainability, of course, can be described as a part of financial reporting, but other areas like certain aspect of auditing in the area of risk, ethics. So like that, subject where examiner can, give different types of question. With the time pressure, almost it's impossible for students to, unless you are properly planning to face this examination prior to the exam, to understand what standards you need to go through, what are critical areas in the study text you must necessarily go through. If you don't have that pre-preparation, you are at a risk. So therefore, what I wanted to say, almost everybody say after the exam, I didn't have time, I missed this question. After doing the consolidation, maybe 2 hours left, right, to accounting standard, and you may do the rest of the paper within maybe less than 1 hour, but there may be very easy questions that you can easily score. So therefore, it's very important. Remember the mock examination. Really, through my experience, I have seen students even who got prizes say that these mock examinations are absolutely useful. But you know, some students anyway don't take these things as serious. Why mock exam, etc. So we really encourage you to take this as the examination. Very soon, institute will release the actual Prescene. So this has no connection. But of course, this also brings the idea is, so institute idea is to bring the similar standard and see under same exam condition you are able to handle this paper. So that remarks I want to give you. So make sure that you can actually now analyze after this session. So the whole idea of Prescene is to cut down the complexity of this paper. If you remember, both Chamath and myself did the last time Prescene analysis. And you can log into that Prescene and see even some of the tips we gave, guidance we gave, and compare with the actual paper to see how it enables you to do focus studies and to really be efficient in your studies, to focus that these questions are very likely to come. Not to say that you should not study other areas, but then it can really bring some clarity that these areas there is a greater chance of being tested. So that all the past papers, if you take, that visibility is there in the Prescene. So therefore, this session also, now the page that you see, I don't want to go a lot of detail, but I will give you, one might ask why insurance industry is very specialized things, etc. But remember, with the Prescene model, you are not supposed to be a specialist in insurance. But then if you are given the time to read and understand, even in any other industry, you have to have an industry knowledge to handle some areas. So financial reporting generally you should know, but some areas, say bank case study, or leasing, or it may be telecommunication. Of course, the industry dynamics can affect financial reporting, internal control, as well as risk management related areas. So therefore, through the Prescene, you can easily learn some of these things. And specifically, if you look at Annexure 1, the language spoken in financial reporting language in insurance companies just given in a one page. That certain terms, once you know that, it is like a normal business model. And as you can see, remember, integrated reporting sustainability is part of your syllabus, and I haven't seen questions tested so far. I mean, no major questions. Those things can also come. Now, from there, I will start. So this slide really enables you to understand the business model. So when you say business model, what should come to your mind is the integrated reporting. And this is the integrated report. And Chamath already mentioned that this case study is, very much soft logic life. So meaning in insurance, you have usually two business model, life and general. So they are very different. So this is largely life insurance. So now, when you say business model, integrated reporting should come to your mind. Okay, what is the money-making model? How different capital contributes? So they need to have funds like the banks have, banks collect deposits. They have GWP, gross written premium, money collected. So they need to have, and also capital. Remember now the big point in terms of risk. Whenever I say risk, remember 25% of your syllabus connects to different topics. Starting from business risk to audit risk to internal control can all flow from the word risk, business risk. So that is why when you run a business, risk is everywhere. So insurance by nature is a risk business. Now, if you look at this, is a refresher that you have to go through the chapter to refresh that there are framework, not only integrated reporting, you can also see they have connected this to GRI guidelines. And so business model is such, they have funds that they will invest And then to run an insurance company, you know, they largely, if you read the Prescene, they say largely they depend on insurance agents, and you know, who visit customers, and you know how insurance agents come behind, how many times they would have called you, you know, how they influence, and they actually, you know, get significant commissions. And one of the things, the business risk is during the COVID period, COVID outbreak, that they were not able to visit. So that was a major dynamics that affected insurance industry as a whole in Sri Lanka. So most of these people, now see, we are talking about business now. Now, how that business can affect financial reporting, to internal control, to fraud, to audit, to ethics, all of that you can now think as a students, you know, who is open-minded. So, I mean, that is one facet where these agents, they are struggling, and, you know, some insurance companies have decided to give them some, you know, advance. Now, we don't know whether these advances are recoverable, not. So you can perhaps see the impairment. Like that, you should be able to quickly connect to the financial reporting standard as well as audit risk, right? These are much connected. Remember, financial reporting misstatement is a risk of misstatement, which is another part of your syllabus. So likewise, to make money, they need to have very good relationship with all the stakeholders, the knowledge. Now, again, during the COVID, okay, they came up with not only this company, maybe others, investment in digital, you know, systems, digitization to connect and somehow bring the business back. So now those investments, again, how do you account for those, and how that can affect any financial statement risk arising from those systems, you need to look at. So like that, you know, you have to always read something in a context, right? Not in a vacuum. So when it comes to core business model, what happens is they do something called risk pooling. Now, good example, you know, it's not life insurance, but you know what happens in Sri Lanka during the recent past. Now, insurance companies may be really worried, or see the type of calamity, the houses destroyed, all of that. Now, what happens is some of these claims are very big. So what happens in insurance business is to collect money from everybody, from small to big, but that there is a larger fund, say life fund. So that fund can grow accordingly. They can cater to most of the public, or the customers at large. So you collect from many, and you are able to serve anybody's risk or mitigate anybody's risk. That concept is risk pooling. So that money is invested. But unless they invested in a prudent manner, this business can come under scrutiny, because remember, these are highly regulated. So like bank, they have the capital adequacy. In financial company, they need to maintain solvency margin. For example, those are regulators. Again, you might ask, well, we don't need to study all of that. No. But then when a Prescene is given, obviously, at least you should know that there is a business risk. If any insurance company, now I'm giving you an example, if examiner asks you to write business risk, you can explain there is a possibility of non-compliance with those, especially those imposed by IBSL Sri Lanka. Then you can be more specific. Now, with the drop in revenue and the challenges, revenue, the word net written premium, right? And challenges, see, when it comes to fair valuation, that life fund is such a complicated exercise of how do we get the fair valuation, kind of market value, how do we assess at a given date, what will be the obligation of insurance providers, even if you forget all complicated standards, the logical question is this requires, that's the auditing thinking, right? So some of the words that you must use in the answers, right? This has the, for example, the word complexity, significant judgment. As a result, see, there is a higher inherent risk that these may be misstated, especially with the COVID context. You know, when it comes to any valuation, that the fair valuation is going to be significantly affected with the current market conditions. So back to investment management, again, you know, SLFRS 9, the financial instrument, the valuation things can, you know, like that, you should be able to connect. And Chamath already explained some of the reporting standard, but from a risk of business risk point of view, this case study actually, there are a lot of information that you can utilize. Now, you can also see, to run this business model successfully, the governance and risk management is critical, right? So the page number 20, of course, you can go through. It's just one slide. So now, how do we connect this to the syllabus? Now, examiner can ask, I can give you by the learning outcome reference, how business risk can result in misstatement. So if examiner asks you to explain some of the business risks, of course, that was tested in some past papers, how they result in risk of misstatement, right? And then the fraud risk, like that, there are, I will more specifically talk in the coming few slides, right? And I am giving you a minute to just read this, right? And then I will explain to you, take another 2 minutes, this, not the jargon, but the concepts behind financial reporting. Just take a minute to take a look. Right. So now see what is, there's no much complication here. It's just the terminology. Like a normal company's revenue, when they collect premium from the customers, that goes as GWP, gross written premium. And then as a part of Chamath explained this, see, I mean, if there is a major risk, this local company may not be, there are giant, reinsurance companies where they transfer some part of the risk. So as a part of the business model, like the direct costs, they have to incur reinsurance. So the net written premium is the amount that they can initially, make available for them to run the business. So then the biggest item in the P&L in this business model is the claims that comes, right? So now again, as from internal control perspective, if it is a general insurance business, obviously, there is a greater chance during the COVID period, how claims were handled through the digital process, all of those things, thinking can come. So you have to really adjust when there is a new case study, while, theory, how do you really connect it? That's very important. So again, when it comes to the insurance claim, so you can actually, while their claim is say 1 million, so say 10 million, but you can recover some part from the reinsurer. So that's the net claim. So the net claim is also, you can see in the account. So the biggest, I would say, most complicated single critical item, like in a bank, we talk about loan, this life fund. So whatever collected, it has to be booked, recorded as a liability, as a long-term insurance fund. And that again, the regulation govern that. So the idea of this fund is, you have to value this fund using actuarial value. That's a very complicated task. So now again, what is the internal control implication, right? If you look at from auditing angle, can auditor blindly rely on a valuer, right? Or to what level external auditor can place a reliance on internal control system of the company? How if control environment is stronger, see, actually auditors might really struggle to audit the life fund, right? It is very hard. If you talk to some of the CFOs of these insurance companies, you will understand the complication of somebody outside to really audit. So therefore, so what is the implication for you? I will cover that, but this slide is essentially to understand. Now, what are the, very few explanation, but you can now understand, because you all are anyway specialists in financial reporting when it comes to a different industry. So there may be a change, but still those basic principles will not change. Moving on, I just want to tell you from risk of misstatement, taking one example that I mentioned, say significant risk. If examiner asks you if examiner use this word coming from auditing standard number 315, significant risk, right? In auditor's judgment, those risks that require special attention. So in the actual company, in this case, you see auditors have identified insurance contract having a significant risk. Why? See, even when you write an answer in the examination, These words are very important. Now, they even in the annual report, they don't use a complicated language. Auditors say that because this involves significant judgment over uncertain future outcome, especially what is the settlement value for these policyholders, right? And that due to the COVID, the valuation of these, the assumptions that are used like discounting rate, inflation, right? And other operating assumptions, you don't need to actually mention this name, but this type of answer, whether it is insurance or some other fair valuation, you might use and you will get marks, right? So what auditors are typically doing, they have to necessarily rely on expert, but some assessment need to be done, where the expert is competence, right? In terms of qualification, experience, capability, independence, etc. But most importantly, the important point I want to connect is how do you connect this to internal control, which is a part of your syllabus, right? Now, some of these companies, IT controls, and how do we check the accuracy of data that goes to actuary, from what system it comes. So like that, some of the basic testing need to be done. For example, the data that goes to actuary should be based on the company's active policy holders, like that. So those type of risk. Now imagine if you find a company where you are very uncomfortable about the control environment. So the directors and owners are such that, you know, they are waiting for an opportunity to tweak these numbers. And COVID is a good example to say, look here, we are reassessing this discounting rate, and then that can create a big, I mean, major change in the life fund. You can see life fund, if there is any change that will come to P&L, right? The change in the life fund. So the assumption can bring that change. So like that, you know, this case study to any case study tells you that you have to have that eye to really drill down and say, look here, the inherent risk is high. So in terms of the control risk, how company is going to apply, say, COSO 5 components, how the control environment should be from auditor's perspective as well as company's perspective, how the risk assessment should take place. Third one, how control activity should mitigate this risk, and how information system, fourth one, I'm referring to COSO 5 components. And finally, say from internal audit or risk management angle, how do we know these controls are practiced? I'm just giving you a perspective from auditing as well as company's internal control. Remember, ABR is not an auditing paper per se, but that understanding of auditors' thinking is very important. That is why that risk part has come. So now, specifically in the Prescene, they say the company used 3 lines of defense model. Now, first of all, you need to understand what is that. So the simple idea behind 3 lines of defense coming from the military jargon that, you know, we call in Sinhala is Arakshaka Walalu. If something goes wrong in a company, who should first protect the company? Those who are running the business at ground level. Say, I'm in an insurance company, you may be a ground level manager. You need to ensure that that ground level risk of dealing with the customers, whatever those risks, are mitigated. So the risk has to be first arrested or mitigated by those who are running the business. But let us say those who are running the business, they are going to ruin the business. Then the oversight body, see this word oversight is also called a mistake, but oversight in governance means supervision. If the first party miss, company can have, you know, financial control, the risk and risk management processes to detect if the first line fails. So the big difference when it comes to both line fail, there is one part in the company that directly reports to an independent body to see what can possibly go wrong and probably to govern. So that's internal audit. So these 3 lines of defense is a very popular framework used by most companies to articulate, look here, business, you should manage the risk. And then there are people who are in bank, we call, let us say in bank, they use this word middle office function. There's some check-in function inside the company, but they are also reporting to management. But the main thing when it comes to audit committee, now see, audit committee is in your syllabus. See, do you think audit committee can do everything? No. Audit committee is armed, supported always by internal audit, right? So like that, you should be able to think this is how 3 lines of defense works. So more specifically, these are very good hints for you to now itself write an answer. Imagine now when we might have a discussion on your actual Prescene. Now see, like I mentioned, it's a golden opportunity for you to practice that I am preparing answers for this possible question, because most of the students fail writing. The writing is very important, and I am again reminding you, those students who are very serious in studies, who actually will sit with discipline in one place and say, look here, I have analyzed the Prescene, answer this question in 3 hours, that student can potentially be a prize winner. I have a lot of examples in my life like that, those students who are serious. Whenever we speak to, I'm sure Tamat will comment from his experience. Those prize winners, so exceptional students, they are usually very serious students for studies. You can just settle for 50, no harm, but try to be exceptional, not just in the exam, but at work as well as in your life. So anyway, coming to this, how we connect this to syllabus topics. Now, one other thing that I said, examiner can ask you, I don't need to open the learning outcome and now show you, ideally we should. And I always encourage you, the first thing, if you are ready to the exam, if you are ready for the exam, the first thing you should look at is to read each learning outcome and see, I can tackle any question. If examiner asks, evaluate, you can write down this question, evaluate, right? How business risk can result in risk of misstatement, right? Provide at least 3 areas of business risk and 9 marks. So how do you write now? See, these are good examples to connect. So COVID claims over 2 billion, right? So that's probably a significant rise. Disruption to business operation or the business continuity. So this seems to be general, but more specific disruption is given to say that 90% of the life insurance, so I mentioned this point already, they are reliant on these agents. And then because of the lockdown, the mobility was affected. And then they were compensated by giving advance payment. And this is actual case in most insurance companies, if you ask. So even the regulation was relaxed. And again, actual case. So what is the risk of this? For example, risk of recovery. Can there be a fraud risk, right? Can there be favoration to some? Now that is where in your syllabus, remember risk of misstatement connects to fraud standards. So we can ask you now, do you know those 3 golden fraud indicators? Incentive or pressure, opportunity, rationalization. COVID is a good opportunity in complex areas for management to tweak and make profits, right? Create profit artificially. And cybersecurity risk is a big topic. Because they have, I think in the case study indicated the effort of digitization, etc. Now, market receive the bigger. In the business model, whatever they collect, they have to invest. Of course, the regulation restrict you to invest. It gives you guideline that there is a given percentage you have to invest in government bond. The balance may be in equity, all of that. But again, that general risk definitely come. How do we do fair valuation now with the volatile conditions? So whatever case study that comes, whenever there is a fair valuation, especially that takes into account unobservable data, say, for example, valuation of the company that is not listed. So you should be able to write a risk saying this is, due to the lower volume in the market, inactive market, there is a chance that the fair valuation may be overstated, which will further increase by the fraud risk indicators. Complete answer. So like that, you should be able to connect and write a meaningful answer, right? Then data this is a very common issue during the COVID period. The confidentiality, the working from home, all of that. So confidential data can leak, can be released, things like that. So by looking at that, in addition, the case study has more specifically given this information that during the last audit committee, these were discussed, that cyber crimes that has increased. What is the role of the board in cyber security? Now, this examiner has not yet tested. These are new things in corporate governance. For example, more specifically in our corporate governance code with the revision, they brought this fact that there has to be, the board is responsible. They have to appoint a cybersecurity officer and to make sure that the security infrastructure is such that they can tackle cyber risk. So the penetration testing, your firewall is active, all of that, your vulnerabilities, the external vulnerability assessment, some understanding you need to have. That's part of governance. That's why it has brought under corporate governance, right? And then internal auditors have been asked to change the audit plan to take into account the current risk climate as well as business changes. Because in this case study, if you read, they say they have implemented a new system, digitization, all of that. And also they are trying to get assurance from external audit on the integrated report for the sustainability. Now that indirectly, if examiner also, the Prescene, they can give you a lot of things. And if now examiner has the option to select any of those topics. If I am the examiner, you know, in this case, let us say, you can ask a question from sustainability. Some frameworks, you see board is hiring a consultant to figure out what is the kind of acceptable framework against which company's sustainability framework can be benchmarked, and to get external assurance of why that some director says is useless. So you are supposed to convince the board that why this is important. Can you write something? You can't directly copy paste. You have to think. And if you have read those notes, whatever study text notes carefully, always think practically how this works. Then you are able to write an answer. Then external auditor, specifically audit committee says that because given this higher risk, I mean the new risk landscape, the audit committee wants the external auditor to explain what is your audit approach. How do you address complex items like the life fund, right? So that is a specific area. Now you see, if you are, I really doubt whether you have gone through all the learning outcome carefully. Do you know there is a learning outcome call in the syllabus? I can now open and show you, right? Interaction between audit committee and the auditor, or interaction between company and the auditor. So there are auditing standards we call the matters of governance interest. So let us say you are the external auditor, you are supposed to communicate 3 matters of governance interest, 9 marks. I'm sure most of the students will not score because these areas may be neglected. See, examiner gradually test all the learning outcome. That's the normal practice during the syllabus life cycle. Untested areas are to be tested. So be mindful about those topics, that if examiner asks what are the matters of governance interest that need to be communicated from external auditor to audit committee, can you write the answer based on this Prescene, right? So more specifically, before we conclude, of course, please ask some questions, both Chamath and myself available. So we will finish soon. So we are inviting you now, think what questions need not to be limited to this discussion. If you have a subject or any other question in relation to the subject, please take this opportunity to clarify. So one possible question is this: business risk, how it could result in risk of misstatement, right? So you don't need to have a expert knowledge of the insurance industry. If you just read the case study information, very easily you can connect. So I mentioned to you one example of COVID, how it disrupted the agents visiting to make new business. So that was a significant hindrance. So how they were able to overcome that? What was company's response? As a result, can there be a risk? And like I said, if they ask, when it comes to complex areas in financial reporting like life fund, can be a complex area. So how company's internal control framework can possibly reduce the inherent risk? You know, ROM means IR and CR, the combined thing. Inherent risk, combined risk, sorry, control is taken together called ROM. So when the IR is high, if internal controls are good, the combined risk can be reduced. That's why you can explain how control environment can reduce the possibility that the life fund, there can be misstatement in the life fund. See, we don't know much about how to value a life fund, but generally you can say that when there is a good control environment, the fraud risk can be reduced. How? Because the good control environment includes, right, independent non-executive directors oversight, the audit committee practices. These things can deter inappropriate accounting treatment. So audit committee specifically, I mentioned that, audit committee's role, something, right? Now see, one of the questions that can come last two exam papers, if you look at, in both examiner has tested this governance question of COVID and corporate governance. Now let's think the recent crisis, the business disruption that is happening now with the financial crisis in the country, how audit committee's role should change now, or the risk committee, right? But more than risk committee, audit committee is more relevant to you. And matters of governance interest. That's the key thing I'm sure most of you have forgotten. And in the next slide, therefore, I thought of reminding that fraud risk very easily in this exam, in this case study, we can test that, examiner can test that area. And then cybersecurity, I mentioned cybersecurity. Now, I haven't added sustainability or integrated reporting. Sustainability practices, the role of the board, if that is tested, or ESG. Let us say there is a question that, one of the shareholders is talking about the board has to play a much active role in ESG with the current economic climate in Sri Lanka. So you have to make a case to explain why ESG risk is important. Now you're wondering, what is ESG? No need to wonder, I'm sure you know. So, but these current topics, just be mindful. Usually there is a trend, if you look at past examination papers, in most cases, started examination, I see it's always good to relate it to the current context so that you can, that's a reflection that students can apply the knowledge in a given context. So this is what I meant by matters of interest is governed by auditing standard in the syllabus, right? So if they ask what need to be communicated to audit committee, one item is qualitative aspect of financial reporting. That means the fair valuation estimates uncertainty which we spoke can be communicated. It's not a qualification, right? It is a early indication that there are going to be a problem in your accounts or significant difficulties that auditor cannot audit. These documents are not available. They say digitized, but no, there is no way to retrieve those data, right? Discuss. And any other significant matters. So significant matters again is auditor's professional judgment. It can be relating to evidence gathering, no fair valuation, no, it can be issue with the director likewise. So that's the analysis. I think while Chamath said there's a little information in financial reporting, but there is some information for you to really practice this area. But I am sure when you now analyze this case study and face the actual paper, please be serious. You will get a good experience to apply both financial reporting and this section. So Chamath, do you want to add anything before you open up for the question or anything that you missed to mention?
No, sir, actually everything that was included. Just to tell you as a concluding remarks, as Indonesia said, take this as a good learning experience because institute has taken a huge effort on this organizing this particular exam for you. And I think it is one of the biggest chance you to get through the exam. So before, because in our times, to be frank with you, Indonesia, in our times, we didn't have this kind of a chance. And now that chance is provided by the institute to you. And I think you will take this chance in a positive note, and you will all take this example as a big help to pass the final exam which is going to happen in July. So that is all from my side, students. So if you have any questions, we'll give them 2 to 3 minutes. So you can ask any question from us, even with regards to this Prescene or any other matters. Students, you can ask any questions from us. Any general type of questions or relating to this? Seems like as usual, we don't have any questions. Maybe they have 100% understood or not understood anything. Okay, there's one question. If any person now could got through exam. So it is like this student basis. So I think Suranga sir also have good experience more than me about this matter. It is just all about what your capabilities are and what you're thinking, because we specifically don't know what your capabilities, because there are some students, to be frank with you student, I am a student who do all these studies like last 2 months or 3 months. Maybe some students can do it, maybe some others can't do it, but it all depends on your capabilities and your dedication. Even we have almost like 2 months for the exam. It is like a good considerable period, and thanks to institute they have this time. Normally the exam is like June end. This time we have till most probably like July 17th, right? So we have enough time. Just what is required is your commitment. So we know, even though there are very to be frank with you student, there are very little registration for the mock paper as well, but it's a really good chance you today. So that is why it's all depend on your commitment. If you have the commitment and if you have the dream to pass the exam, this is not a hurdle. I don't see any difficulty in this particular paper. Just what is required is commitment. I think Suranga also have something to add: plan, commitment, and you can do it. Sir, any idea about that?
Yeah, I think you are correct, Chama. So basically, if I tell you, if you get to know that we can live only for another 1 week, what would you do? So see, normally when we lecture, we may say this is the, imagine in a physical setup, we start a new lecture series and we say, students, you study from the beginning, because we don't want to say that you study at the last minute. But having said that, let's say you have now only 1 week, right? You can still have the, if you have the courage, determination, it's possible, right? So anything is possible, but you need to be very strategic. The lesser the time you have, but even in that time, if you are just following the same practice of just allocating 2 hours, it won't work. You have to necessarily allocate more time, more discipline, and smart learning. When we say smart learning, not to start opening all the books and reading, that will never work. So you need to have a very different approach to see what the examiner is actually testing, and to read learning outcomes, what are the essential areas that are coming, and then start writing, practicing, right? So don't try to read the answers. You have to have a very different approach. You can definitely do that. It may be within a week, but assuming that you have some level of understanding, if you haven't done anything, of course. But I understand this question is that you haven't done any active studies. Can we now start? Definitely, yes, but have a very smart approach is what I want to add, Cham. So any other questions?
Yeah, another questions as well. Will they release result for this exam? Obviously, this is actually not like actually student don't. If you get, let's say you are getting 50 marks and you are very happy and you think that, yes, obviously I will be getting 50 marks for the exam. No, that is not the intention of this particular exam. Basically, student, you will not get any results, but you will be getting a whatever the answer, whatever I would say, the paper discussion, right? After the paper, those who are sitting the paper, you will get a paper discussion and you can join the paper discussion. And most of the time, myself and Suranga sir will conduct the paper discussion as well. And we will be giving you a lot of tips for the exam. It is not just like a paper discussion. So you can go to the last time paper discussion and see, mock paper discussion and see. We have given a lot of tips to the student. Learning outcomes, including webinars and everything. We have given a lot of instructions. So I think take this as a, again, that's why I told at the very beginning, take this as a learning process and don't focus about the getting a final mark like a result. But you practice and you do the paper, and we will have the paper discussion as well, and get familiar with the examination environment, and it will give a huge advantage. Believe me, it will give a huge advantage when it comes to the final paper. So we have another question. Will it be helpful to do ACC, other professional exam papers? Yes, if you have time, you can do those things. Highly encourage if you have time, right? But that's why Surangas also mentioned you should have some kind of a smart plan for the next few months. If you go and try to do everything, it may not possible to do with maybe most of you are working and some of them are going with training. So that is why if you have time, ACC and other professional papers, maybe ICAW, whatever, you can do this. If do past papers 2020 up to now sufficient, sir? So doing Suranga sir, can you add something?
Yeah, actually, like even the other question, Chamath, what matters is the quality of your past paper discussion. Now when you say past paper, some students, like I said earlier, they just read the paper, read the answer, right? But if you really forget about ACC or any other thing, right? Like you rightly said, Chamath, should do that if you have time. But the students who don't have time, what you need to really do, even one paper that you do, a real study. I look at the Prescene, take a time, about a few hours of Prescene analysis and preparing, and then thinking what I learned, how it comes, and then how it could be tested. And then you sit and with discipline answer the full paper. Then be your own examiner to mark it and criticize your answer. Now, if you take that cycle, see whether you are improving from one to another. And that way, if you practice 2-3 papers also can give you a lot of learning rather than doing 10 papers. So the key is, there are very small students, they will just do 1 or 2, but then general advice is all this is a fairly new subject. We have only, I think, about 5-6 notes a month. So those past papers you can do, but don't forget, you don't have much time now. Your Prescene will come very soon. Then you have to really align, especially this preparation for 50 marks question, also very important. So meantime, you can finish the other papers. So Institute has done other mock exams, and I'm sure your other lecturers will do mock examinations. So all of these are opportunities for you to practice. So there is more than enough. So my personal advice is, even Chamath is alluding to same, don't try to do other exams. First, you make sure that this main thing is done. So that's the addition.
Just to add something more, sir. So I don't know how many of you are focusing on the action verbs. So if I ask action, let's say analyze, which tier it is in and what is required when we say analyze, a lot of students don't do. And sometimes students are asking, sir, where we can find the action verbs. Some students don't know it is attached to the exam paper as well. So that is why student, more or less, as correctly mentioned, Suranga sir correctly mentioned, try to do a one past paper. Don't read, because the suggested solution might not be the 100% correct answer. I mean, you can write a good answer, a better answer than a suggested solution. And maybe sometimes whatever the suggested solution within the time limit, you may not be able to answer as well. Don't just read the suggested solution. Think and logically think. And first thing that you need to highlight is the action verb. That is why every paper, the action verb is highlighted. So you need to think whether it's tier 1, tier 2, or anyway, in your level, you don't get the tier 1. It should be at least tier 5, 4, and 6. So you have to have that understand. This is a tier 1, tier 5 action verb. So I have to write answer which is satisfying the requirement of the examiner. Otherwise, you will end up with obviously less than 50. So that is why try to focus on what is required and try to give a best answer rather than going here and there. Try to give a best answer within the time period. That is why Surangas also try to mention, I think. So students, hope that no any other questions. So anyway, we will be meeting you with the Prescene, not the Prescene paper discussion as well. So we will give you more tips on improving your writing skills and whatever approaches to the paper. And I think Suranga sir, we can wind up the session.
Yeah, so definitely, so be very active at least from today. So you definitely, this time is more than sufficient, but make sure you are allocating bigger part of your time for studying, because see, this is one of thing in your life, investment. Don't waste your life. So with that, we can conclude. Thank you, everyone. All the best.
Thank you, students. Good night.